Phoenix Audio presents
Night Shadows. Written and performed by Ron Ely. No question about it. I was out of shape. I no longer cared if I was above or below the tide line. I no longer tried to avoid the sudden surf rushes. My shoes were wet and caked with sand, yet I took a sort of perverse pride in them. They weren't designer, pump-action, psychedelic-colored cross-trainers. They were just plain old-fashioned sneakers. An overview of the rest of me said basically the same thing, plain vanilla. I wore sweats, baggy and cotton, just like I did 20 years ago. I had done 5 miles, and strange wheezing sounds were coming from my throat. As I approached the last 200 or so yards, I pumped hard into a sprint and then slowed to a leisurely walk just above the tide line, toward a sun which had already lost interest. I looked around and reminded myself that I was on one of the most picturesque beaches of the California coastline. I was still new enough to Santa Barbara to appreciate it. The cliff face was 200 feet high. It was just enough to insulate the estates on top from those public beach commoners who walk the 2 miles from the public access here to this private stretch. I kept my eyes up, tracing the bluff until I found what I thought was the edge of my own property. It was hard to spot because my place was squeezed in up there between the big estates, with only a couple of eucalyptus trees on the rim to mark it. The light was going, so I resumed my trot to get off the beach before dark. There was only one way out, and I had visions of wandering through the night, fighting off the rising tide, looking for the exit. I drove out the card-operated gate, which guarded the beach access. It struck me as a redundancy, for by the time a person got that far, he had already passed through a Coco Palms entry gate and a security once-over that would do the White House proud. There were a lot of very important people living in Coco Palms, and there was one common denominator: money. It was all around me as I turned onto Faring Lane, the main road out. I hit the brakes hard and swerved into the bridle trail which ran beside Faring Lane. The staggering runner toppled headlong into the space I had just vacated and rolled toward the center line. I pulled the emergency and popped the belt release as part of my move out of the car to the downed man. The light had dimmed too much for me to see the man clearly, but I could hear the rasping demand for air long before I reached him. He groped with feebly clawing fingers at me and spoke garbled, unrecognizable words. Something clattered to the pavement beside him, released from dying fingers. I scooped up the squared metal object he had dropped as the headlights of a car caught our strange tableau. I stood like a jackrabbit frozen in the high beams until...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?